Hello and welcome to this edition of Ritter's Rant. The word we're going to explore today is dominance. It's a concept that has been recently introduced into the public mix by none other than Secretary of State Pete Hegseth, who held a very interesting press conference on the lawn of the Pentagon the other day, where backed up by some soldiers operating small unmanned aerial systems, also known as drones. He received and signed and disseminated a memorandum that seeks basically to guarantee U.S. drone dominance in the coming years. I mean, first of all, let's just underscore the reality that drones, these small unmanned aerial vehicles, have redefined the modern battlefield. And this is reflected in Secretary Hegseth's memorandum. He says that war will never be the same. And he's right. War will never be the same. And he also acknowledges that those nations who are potential adversaries of the United States, China, Russia, have a significant head start, advantage over the United States, both in terms of how they acquire and use these unmanned aerial systems, but also their experience on the battlefield. The United States has no similar experience. And so what Pete Hegseth is trying to do is fast track to make up for lost time. And he does this in a number of ways. He focuses on procurement. And if anybody wants to understand why the United States will never successfully compete with Russia and China on UAV procurement, just dig into the nuances involved in the creation and implementation of the Blue List, which is a Department of Defense approved list of drones that have passed through significant vetting procedures, and the Green List, which is run by the commercial side of the house, civilian side of the house, but again, designed to identify and streamline civilian acquisition of these small drones. It's supposed to be efficient. It's supposed to streamline things. But I mean, to get, for instance, to get on the green list, you've got to pay like $100,000 fee per system. It doesn't seem like something that would facilitate fast track. It seems like it creates yet another bottleneck. And then there's also the issue of these systems have to be U.S. made or at least non-Chinese made, which again limits the field. I understand if you're going to go into a drone war with China, you probably shouldn't source your drones from China. But during this stage of acquisition and testing, I would imagine you'd want to have access to everything, because that's what the Russians are doing. I mean, it's the Russians. Let's just be honest. They stumbled into this drone warfare. By their own admission, the Russians weren't prepared when the conflict with Ukraine started. They had a drone doctrine that made use of, I guess, what we call conventional drones. They had the high altitude drones that would do the surveillance. They had drones that you could put rockets on and fire things off. They had high value kamikaze drones. But this war quickly changed into something that the soldiers themselves did. They brought in these small Chinese made unmanned aerial systems and they started employing them on their own. The tactics that have been developed aren't tactics pushed down on the soldiers by the Russian bureaucracy, but actually developed by the soldiers themselves. And now the Russian bureaucracy is looking at it, saying, how do we adapt to this? Last month in June, President Putin addressed this issue. He spoke about, the need to, get Russia officially in line with what's needed to support the reality of drone warfare. Russia's talking about creating a whole new branch of service, which is drone operators. That reflects, again, the importance of drones on the modern battlefield. But again, this isn't an idea conceived by the Russian leadership. This is an idea that's already been implemented on the field. In interviewing Abdi Aludanov about Operation Potok, the daring raid through the pipe in Kursk to liberate the towns and throw the Ukrainians back, he spoke of how the Akhmat Special Forces already have their own drone units and how drones have been integrated down to the lowest level. These are innovations that are put in place by Aladanov, by his leaders, by his own soldiers. This isn't something that the Russian high command said you have to do the following. They did it because it's necessary to survive, to win, to prevail on the battlefield. That's their laboratory. And it works. And the Russian leadership seems to reflect this. Also, the way they acquire drones. They aren't getting their drones by filling out paperwork, sending up to the Ministry of Defense and saying, we need drones. The Ministry of Defense turns to the Defense Center, says, produce these drones. It goes through the acquisition system, and they issue them. No, there's a whole network of private Russian citizens who buy drones using their own funds and then deliver these drones to the front lines, to the units that need them, that operates outside of the framework of official military Ministry of Defense channels. Vladimir Putin, again, recognized this. He met with these people. He rewarded them. He praised them. But he also said, we have to bring this under control because this isn't how the system's supposed to operate. But this is what happens when you have innovation in times of war. And as a result, you get revolutionary changes. For instance, these small drones, they're radio controlled. That means that their signals can be jammed. Now, the soldiers have solved this problem two ways. One, by being innovative in how they apply their electronics, being very adaptive. So if they send a drone out and it gets jammed, it fails, they change the frequency, they frequency hop, they do these things. But as the electronic warfare becomes more and more sophisticated, they brought in the concept of fiber optics. And now you have drones which can't be jammed, which can operate up to 20 kilometers. In some cases, they've gone out to 41 kilometers into the enemy rear, and they're very accurate, high quality video, and very deadly. This was a soldier innovation. That means somewhere on the front line, a common soldier said, hey, to defeat the electronic warfare, why don't we apply fiber optics? And then it got adapted, and now the system is reacting to this. This is the Russian laboratory. It's one that feeds off the Ukrainian laboratory. The Ukrainians are very innovative as well. The Ukrainians have adapted the Russian fiber optic tactics, and now both sides use fiber optic drones. They both are very innovative in their use of electronic warfare and their counter-drone strategies, and they feed off each other. As this battle goes on, one side will do one thing, the other side will observe, react, do it, they react, and you have this modern laboratory where if you make a mistake, you die. This is literally Darwinism on the military battlefield, and the Russians are emerging dominant. Pete Hegseth wants to catch up. But how do you do that? The United States, of course, has created units that are working with the Ukrainians, taking the innovations and the lessons learned out of Ukraine into the American laboratory. But we don't have something similar to that. Pete Hegseth in his memorandum has tasked the Marines, the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, the Coast Guard to develop units, organizational structures within their respective branches that focus solely on drones, and to get these guys moving to incorporate drones into the tactics. The emphasis is on the Indo-Pacific in preparation for a potential conflict with China. But nonetheless, they're doing this. But peacetime innovation comes slow. And the other problem is the United States doesn't trust their soldiers. So in Russia, you can have a young sergeant sitting there who will make a decision. I don't like the way this performed. I am going to adapt it and send it out there. And he's not getting permission from higher management. His job is to put a drone on target, and he's going to get that drone on target. And he does so in a very affordable manner. In the United States, God forbid if a lance corporal, or sergeant had an innovation and just acted on their own. No, they have to write a paperwork. It's got to get staffed up to the very top. Somebody has to do a budgetary review, determine whether or not there's funding available for it. Then they'll approve it down, but they'll divert it out of the sergeant's hands into a laboratory where a whole bunch of people will be looking at it. And next thing you know, it takes a long time. It costs a lot more money, and it's not that good because people keep adding things. Soldiers keep it simple. Marines keep it simple. Russian soldiers keep it simple, only doing that which is necessary to achieve the outcome on the battlefield. As soon as you layer in bureaucracy, it's over. It's over. And one of the problems is, while Pete Hegseth's memorandum speaks of streamlining, it is creating additional levels of bureaucracy that mean that ultimately the United States will never catch up with Russia, will never catch up with the Ukrainians. And when we do, literally we'll be reinventing the wheel, and the first time we'll be doing something will be about the billionth time that the Russians do it. To give you an example, in Europe right now, the U.S. Army just published a video. It shows soldiers learning how to drop grenades from the drones. Learning how to drop grenades from the drones. Now, you can go back 3 years and look at the Ukrainian Russian conflict and see they've been dropping grenades from drones for a long time. They've perfected that art. And here, the American soldiers are just now learning how to put a grenade on a drone and begin the process of coordinating and controlling and dropping on the battlefield. And again, they're doing it in a non-lethal battlefield where there's no counter drone activity, jamming. I mean, I remember early on in the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, what they would do is cut the signal, and so the Russians would send a drone over to the Ukrainians. They drop the drone, they'd capture the drone, reconfigure it, send it back over to the Russians, and the Russians would jam it, drop it, and they'd be using the same drone back and forth sometimes. That's how they learn. There is no similar laboratory here in the United States. The Russians right now are producing up to 1,000 of the larger Shahed drones. These one-way kamikaze drones, 1,000 a day in a factory in Tatarstan. The United States just basically created what they call Lucas, which is the American version of the Shahed drone. It's not in full production. It was just put out there. It's passed certain tests, but now it's time to implement it. Are they going to produce 1,000 of these a day? No. I doubt we'll have 1,000 in service total. And that's the difference of scope and scale. The bottom line is Pete Hegseth's brain and heart are in the right place, but we're dealing with an American bureaucracy that is not conducive to streamlining anything. It's not conducive to cost cutting. Actually, it produces the exact opposite effect. And if this is the way we think we're going to achieve drone dominance, I think we're going to find out in the end that we're going to be very frustrated by the outcome, which means the next time America goes to war and our forces are on the front line engaged in this new reality called drone warfare, we're not going to do too well. And that translates into dead Americans and, outcomes on battlefields that are the exact opposite of what we're hoping to achieve. We need to do better. Maybe it's time we actually copy the Russians, trust our soldiers, do actual streamlining, and do what's necessary to win on the battlefield, not necessary to what's to win in the corporate boardroom. Anyways, that's my rant for the day. Next time a thought crosses my mind, I'll be sure to let you know. Thanks.